Welcome to this lesson about gears. This is a part of Robotics for All's early builders curriculum. We hope you enjoyed this lesson. If at any point during this video you would like to re-watch something, feel free to hit pause and re-watch whatever section you would like to re-watch. Let's get started. First, pose with the question, what are gears? And if you've seen gears before, take a second and think about where you have seen gears. Here's some pictures of some gears. We see here in this picture in the upper right, we have these gears right here that have pretty long teeth. And over here we have some gears that the teeth look very different. And here we have very long gears. And then on the bottom right here, we have Lego gears. And these are the types of gears you'll be working with in your challenges. So something that all gears have in common is that they have some sort of teeth. Like here they might look like this, but here they might be a little bit longer. Here they might be a little bit wider. They all have some sort of teeth. And the reason why they have teeth is because they need to be able to interact with each other. The point is that when one gear turns, the teeth push another gear to turn. So you might be wondering, well, why do we have gears? What's the point of having all these complex things? Aren't these things hard to make? Aren't they kind of pointless? Well, that's definitely not the case. We're going to explore in this lesson why we have gears. And take a second to find the gears in your bin if you'd like to look around. These on the bottom right, these are Lego gears. So you will be interacting with these, and I'm going to be showing you some of these gears in videos later in this lesson. So let's move on to the next page where we explain why do we have gears? What's the point of all this jumbled mess of metal here? So why use gears? And we use gears because gears allow you to make things go slower or faster. And this is going to make a little bit more sense later as the lesson goes on, but a smaller gear turning a larger gear, like let's say here we had the green gear turning the red gear. Use your imagination and think that there's a motor attached to the green gear. If you have the green gear turning the red gear, because the red gear is larger, then the axle will turn slower. So if you want to make whatever you're turning to go slower, you would use a small gear turning a large gear. And that works the same way in the other direction. If you want something to go faster, you would plug your motor into the red gear here, and you'd have the larger gear turning the smaller gear, and then it will turn faster. I know this is a little bit confusing right now, but it will all make sense when we do some more demonstrations. And the quick reason as to why this is the case, think about this. There looks like there's 8 teeth on this green gear here, and I don't know, there's maybe 20 or 30 on the red gear. So each time the red gear turns, the green gear is going to turn about 3 to 4 times. If you think about, you have one axle that's spinning, and you turn this one time. Each time this turns, the green one's gonna turn 4 times. But it works in the other way, right? One turn of the green one is only gonna turn the red one about a quarter of the way, a little bit of the way, not the entire way. So you're gonna need a lot of the green turns in order to turn the red one. If that didn't make sense, don't worry about it. The next video should help make it make sense. So thinking about gears, I want you to look at these setups and guess which wheel will move faster. And I encourage you to pause the video right now, considering what I just said over here, and you can go back and forth and maybe pause the video, go back to the slide, and think about which wheel will move faster. And just to explain this picture a little bit more, on the left here we have a large gear, and I know you can't really see the small gear, but there's a small gear behind the wheel right there, and that's connected to an axle. So when this thing turns, the wheel is also going to turn. And on the right, it's a little bit more obvious here. The picture is more clear because there's no wheel blocking it. You have a small gear here, and this small gear here is turning the large gear. So I really want you to pause the video and take some time and think which motor is going to turn the wheel faster. And to make things clear, these are the exact same motor. There is no difference in which motor is stronger. As you can see from the back, they're both attached to the same battery pack. So the answer really just has to do with the gears. That's my hint to you. So take a piece of paper, write it down, or keep it in your head. Tell a friend which one do you think is going to go faster. And we're going to watch a video which will tell us the answer. You can probably already see from the picture and guess which one's going to go, but let's watch the video and I'll tell you which one is going to go faster, and you'll see it in person.
You should have just guessed
which wheel is going to turn faster. But first, let's take a closer look at this contraption. Let's first look at the similarities. There are two motors that are the exact same, turning the exact same size wheel, and they're built on top of the same structure. See, I even use the same colors. And they're both connected to the same battery pack. So we know that the battery strength is not going to be a factor in which wheel turns faster. The only difference is that here we have a large gear turning a small gear, and here we have a small gear turning a large gear. Let's get started and let's see what the answer is. So as you can see, on the left, this is turning much faster than this on the right side. This one you can clearly see is spinning really fast, and that's because you have a large gear turning a small gear. For every one rotation here, this one is turning many times, but it takes many rotations on the right side in order to turn one of the large gear. So thinking about this, you can actually apply this to your building. If you want to make a car go slower, then you would do what we have here on the right. You would have a small gear turning a large gear. And then if you want to make your car go faster, or whatever it is you're building go faster, you would do what we have here on the left, a large gear turning a small gear. We hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Thank you for watching. So we hope that video was important and useful for you to watch, and now let's move on and proceed with this slideshow here. We hope you enjoyed that demonstration there. Let's move on to the next part of this lesson. So now what happens if we keep what we had before, but we do something else? We add another set of gears. So if you see here, this is almost the exact same setup, but what I did is that I put another set of gears. So here I have another small gear and then a large gear. So I'm basically doubling the effect. You can probably guess from the last video which one is going to go faster, and this will also be revealed in the next video, but I also want you to think, if you already know the answer, by how much faster is each one going to go? Do you think the one on the left, do you think it's going to go faster or slower than the other one on the left that we had right here? And same here. Do you think that the one on the right is going to go slower or faster than the one on the right here as well? Let's find out. If you understood what we explained in the last video, this one should be easy. Which one of these will turn faster? Well, we effectively have the same setup, except we doubled the number of gear changes. On this side, instead of just having one gear change from small to large, we have two gear changes from small to large. We first have a small gear turning a large gear, and a small gear turning another large gear. So that effect is doubled. Same here. A large gear turning a small gear, then on that same axle, a large gear turning another small gear. So the effect is doubled. On this side, the speed is going to be slowed down by a factor of 2. And here it's going to be sped up by a factor of 2. Before we turn it on, it's also important to note another aspect of this. The extra speed doesn't come for free. It's much harder to turn this than it is to turn this. This is much easier to turn. And this will make more sense when we come into our bike gear demonstration, but it's also interesting to note that speed doesn't come for free. It takes more power. So let's turn it on and see. You see here, this is an insane amount of speed right here. And this is going very slowly. So isn't that awesome? It's a lot of speed right there. So you can see that thing's going so fast. I wouldn't recommend doing another gear change. That might go so fast that it's going to explode. So very slow, very fast. Now you can really see the example of gears here. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Thank you and bye-bye. So we hope that video was just as fun to watch as it was fun for me to make it. I really enjoyed making that video, so really hope you learned something new in this. And we're going to briefly touch on another aspect of this. This is not as important as the stuff we learned earlier about the speed, but when you're going to be making your wheel turn faster, even if you're using gears, it's going to require a lot more force. And let's take a look at these statements right here. So the white stuff is the stuff from the couple slides back where I talked about the effect of the speeds. Now I'm going to talk about the effect of the power. What power is how much force, how hard are you going to need to turn that thing? So think about it. If you didn't have the motor there, if you're just using your hand to turn it, which one would be easier to turn? And the simple answer here is that if you're having a smaller gear turning a larger gear, the axle's turning slower, the wheel's turning slower, you're going to need to use less power. Your hand won't have to turn as much. This won't have to be as hard to turn. But if you're having a larger gear turning a smaller gear, and then the wheel turns faster, the axle turns faster, if you're using your hand to turn it, it's going to be a lot harder. It's going to hurt maybe more in your arm a little bit. You're going to have to really use extra force. And I think that this concept is pretty important, but this is definitely less important than the stuff here in the white. That's number one. This is just stuff that's kind of important, but since you guys are using motors, you probably won't feel it. But the big takeaway from this lesson is not the power stuff. That's just a small thing. Because you guys are using motors, it's not going to be that important, because you're not going to be physically feeling how hard it is to turn it. But so the big takeaway is just really just this white stuff here, in that if you want to make your contraption, whatever you're making, go slower, you're going to need to have a smaller gear turning a larger gear. Because our motors only have one speed. You can't adjust it. It's either on or off. And if you want to make it go any other speed, you're going to have to use gears. If you want to make it go slower, you're going to have to use a small gear turning a large gear. If you want to make it go faster, you're going to have to use a large gear turning a small gear. That's the big concept. The power stuff is interesting, but if you don't get it, don't sweat it. Just try to remember what's in the white here. Okay, let's go on to a bike gear demo. Let's explore gears in a real-life setting. We just took a look at gears on a Lego setting. Now let's explore gears in real life. And a bike is a very good example of that. If you've ridden a bike before, you've probably interacted with bike gears before, but if you haven't, when you do learn how to bike, you will almost certainly interact with gears because they make your life so much easier when you bike. So why put gears on a bike? Well, I want you to think about it this way. When you're going uphill, do you think that requires more force or less force than when you're going downhill? Thinking about gravity or the force that pushes us down, when you're going downhill, you have gravity with you. The gravity is going to help you go down. So you need to push less. But when you go up, you need to push more because gravity wants to pull you down the other way. So that's why we use gears, so that when we're going uphill, we can make it easier for us and we're going to go slower. But when you're going downhill, we can have a little bit more force in the gears so we can go a little bit faster. Let's take a look at my gear. So in the front, we have 3 gears. And some bikes have more gears or less gears in the front. Mine has 3. And here, the pedals are where you would put your feet. I know my bike is upside down, so try to think about if it were right side up. This is where you put your feet. And these are effectively the motors of your bike. And I know our legs aren't really motors, but they act in the same way as the motors in their previous demonstration. On the back side here, we have 8 gears. And like I said, some bikes have more, some bikes have less, but we have 8 gears here. And they are the other side. This is where the wheel would be attached. Like in our last demonstration, we had a wheel attached to the second one. This is effectively our wheel, except it's a bike wheel now, and it has a little chain here. And the reason why we need a chain is because we can't physically put these 2 sets of gears right next to each other, because you see we have all this other stuff here. So this is to help transfer the motion, but the chain really doesn't do much to the whole system. It doesn't act very differently. So right now what I have is I'm in 3rd gear right here, and I'm in 8th gear down here. So this is a setting that I would use when I'm going downhill, and I have gravity to help me go down. So let's take a look at this. So you see how that thing is going very, very fast? And I know you can't feel what I feel in my hand right now, but this is relatively tough to push. This requires quite a lot of energy for me to push forward. And the reason for this is because if we look at this gear, look how big this gear is. And then we go over here and we look at that very small gear. That gear probably only has maybe 10 teeth. So for one time, I'm going to stop this first so we can maybe count that. So let's look at this. So I push this thing one time, and giving me a little trouble here because yeah, it's very hard to push. So you see I'm pushing this thing one time around the circle, and you see how many times it turns. One turn of this turns the wheel so many times because I have a larger gear going into a smaller gear. So give me a sec here, I'm going to do some adjustments, and then we'll see how it's going to look when I have a small gear here on a large gear. I'm going to temporarily stop the video and I'll come back once I have the settings changed. Sorry, I have to pause the video there. I'm filming with one hand and I have to use two hands in order to move the gears here. And before we get into this, just in case anyone was wondering how we change the gears, there are levers on each side of the handlebars here. You see one here, and on the other side you have the same setup. And you use those to change the gears. So while you're biking, you can just use your hands to change the gears. You don't have to physically pick up the gears and change them. So that's how I did it. And now let's get into it. So as you can see, I made a modification here to the gears here. Before, the chain was up here. Now I moved it down to here. This is a smaller gear, and I moved it from a larger gear to a smaller gear. And now what I did on this side, before the chain was on that very last gear in here, that very small one, you see it? And I moved it all the way up to first gear, which is this large gear. So think about it. In the last one, we had this large gear turning this small gear, which is very small compared to this the big one out here on the outside. It's a very big difference. But now we have this gear turning this gear, and they're almost the same size. So this is the configuration that I use going uphill when I want to apply less power, because I already have gravity pushing back, so it's going to be harder. So let's turn this. So this is very easy for me to turn, and I don't know if you can tell, you probably can't in the video, but I'm really not using a lot of force here. And as you can see, compared to before, and if you don't remember, you can go back in the video to see the comparison. This wheel isn't turning that fast because we have a small gear here turning a larger gear on this side. And as we've seen from the past videos, when you have a large gear turning a small gear, like we had in our last example, it enables it to go faster. But when you have a small gear turning a large gear, like in this situation, it's not going to go as fast. So to summarize this, you might ask, why? Well, when you're going up a hill, it's already a lot of force you need. It's very hard. So by doing this, this requires less power. This is a lot easier to pedal now, because you don't have to turn this as many times. When I was up there, it took so much more force for me to turn this thing. So this is why you use it, because in a bike, the way to most efficiently bike, you always want to have the same force. You want to have the same resistance here. So when you're going uphill, in order to keep the pressure, keep the resistance the same, you want to have this kind of setup. And you're going to go slower, but try going up a hill in highest gear here and lowest gear here, smallest gear here, and have fun with that. That's my challenge to you. It's going to be hard, and you're going to thank your gears for enabling you to be able to get into a small gear to large gear. It's going to be much easier for you. And also when you're going downhill, you're going to be thankful that you have a large gear going into a small gear, because then you can go really, really fast. Otherwise, if you're stuck here, you're just going to have to pedal a lot, and it's going to make your legs really sore to have to keep on turning around. But by using gears, you can, the amount of times this thing turns can be the same, but you're still going to go faster. So gears are a biker's best friend. Hope you enjoyed this demonstration. We hope you learned something new in that demonstration. And if you already started biking, this should make sense. Even if you don't bike already, hopefully I explained it so when you do bike, you can really take advantage of those gears. I bike a lot myself, so it's actually really nice when I use gears to be able to make my life a lot easier. When I go up a hill, I just go to a smaller gear, and then I don't have to push as hard. But when I go downhill, I would really like to go really fast, because I have gravity, I have the downward motion that can really help me go fast. So gears enable me to go both, have it not be too bad when I'm going uphill, and be able to have a lot of fun and go really fast going downhill. Let's wrap up this lesson. What are some real life examples of gears? And we already talked about bike gears, and that's a pretty simple concept there now that I explained it. The one in the middle here, this is a motor, and the reason why we have gears and motors is because we might want to adjust the speed. Maybe it's going too fast, maybe it's going too slow, and you want to get that right output, because when your motor's going too fast, for some purposes that might be good, but when you want precision, when you want things to be accurate, when you want things to be right, you need something to go slower. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder to make things work right. On the right here, you have a car transmission. That's the gears in the car. And if you parents have a car, you've been in the car a lot, well, you don't hear this, you don't see this going on. Most cars are automatic, so all the gear changing happens directly, but it works almost exactly the same as a bike. When the car is going uphill, it's going to go into one of the smaller gears, so the car engine doesn't brake by turning too much. And when it's likewise, when it's going downhill, it's going to go into a bigger gear so the car can actually go faster there. On the bottom here, we have a clock, and clocks use gears in a number of ways. Some fancy watches have different times on them. So like what the main face would be like the time where it is here, and then there'd be another small hand that would show the time, maybe London or Sydney or Tokyo. And it could use gears so it can turn multiple hands at once. And also, some things involve the hands need to be moving at different speeds, right? If your minute hand is going to be moving much faster, so you need a different gear setting there. So gears come in handy in many, many ways, and just what's on this page is not conclusive. There's so many other ways of gears, and we hope you have fun using gears in your lessons in this curriculum. They're very useful, and hope you enjoyed this lesson. Hope you learned something new. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.